Hello.
Hello.
Hanse Nitsigasun, Jody Stonehouse, Sananeo, Michelle First Nation, Nehiao Haudenosaunee Esqueo Bear Clan. I'm the moderator this afternoon as we talk about the intergenerational impacts from Indian residential schools. I want to thank the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the Red Jam Slam Society, the National Campus and Community Radio Association for the sponsorship of this event. There's going to be triggers for people that are listening at home. There's going to be triggers for those of you sitting here today. It's important that we take care of our well-being and one another. If you are online and at your home, you may call 780-758-2582 for provincial, national, and international healing work. It's a fee-for-service. It's a spiritual counselor that is available for you 24/7, as well as we also have our elder here who is available for help as well today. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. You will not give up your idle, roving habits to enable your children to receive instruction. It has therefore been determined that your children shall be sent to schools where they will forget their Indian habits and will be instructed in all necessary arts of civilized life and become one with your white brethren. That was in 1846, the Indian Superintendent P.G. Anderson. We're going to move. First speaker is our elder Taz Boucher. She is of Cree, Sioux, Navajo, and Scottish nations. She is the 19th child and originally hails from Faust, Alberta. She has provided spiritual understanding to nationally and international, and she has worked in New York City. She is a community pipe carrier. She holds sweat lodges. She is a sun dancer of 25 years. Elder Taz has provided services to various sectors of government to ensure cultural competency in all the services provided to our children, particularly with the justice system. She recently completed a 5-year term as the institutional elder for the Edmonton Remand Center, and she is very dedicated to keeping the spiritual practices alive with our people. Please welcome Mother Kukumdumeni, Elder Taz Boucher.
Hi, Naskum Tanawa. I thank you all for being here today, and I'm really privileged to be able to speak openly and honestly about the things in regards to spirituality and our spiritual practices. When the residential school policy took place many years ago, there was another policy that took place as well that made it illegal for us to practice our spiritual practices. In 1884, it became illegal for Nihiawak, indigenous people of the land, to practice smudging ceremonies, to practice sun dances, to practice sweat lodge ceremonies, potlatch, all those things across our own territories, our own land. And that, to me, is the core devastation of any human being when you take away their spiritual belief, when you affect and alter the spiritual wellness of an individual, of a family, of a community. You are devastating the entire community in so many ways. That's the core of our people. That's how we stay connected to the land, to the water, and to everything, and to each other. It helps us to stay in harmony as well and teaches us those gifts of how to work together and be together. When the people who came, they must have noticed that time how strong we were in our ceremonies and how afraid they became of that strength and that power. Well, it's back. It's back. And I have been watching it grow and grow and grow since I was a child. I'm really fortunate. My mother was not in residential school. Nukomina, my grandmother, she was not in residential school. But my dad was. And my dad was in residential school for 8 years. And I had no idea how much it impacted my family for many years. This is an honor to my dad. I say my little ancestor, this little guy travels around with me when I do teachings and when I work with the government. Recently did a 2-day training for the Victims of Crime Unit with the Justice Department of Edmonton, or Alberta I should say, and taught them that if you can strengthen the home, you can strengthen the mother of that home, you can strengthen the home. And the reality is we are still struggling to keep our children. We are still fighting for our children. And really, that should not be going on. Who the heck came along and decided that we have to prove ourselves to anybody? Eh? My dad always spoke about how he missed his mom. So I put the word mom there because they would sit and they would cry. And the women I work with, and I've worked with in the institutions, and I've said to them, you know, your children miss you 10 times more than you miss them. They don't understand when they're small. That is the size of the children that they would take to residential school, 5 years old starting off. And many are smaller than that. They're being taken into foster care and adopted out. And we as a people must stand up because we're the only ones who really care. Who really care. My son is sitting here. He's going to be 40 next week. And I'm so honored to have him here. My 2 granddaughters are sitting here. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like not to have ever seen them for like 8 years. My dad did not see his mother for 8 years, and he cried for her. He didn't even realize he was Sioux Nation till he was older, and we took him to a Sundance over in Sioux Valley. And that's when he connected and said, I remember that ceremony. And we went, Dad, you're from the Sioux Nation. You're not Cree. And yet he spoke fluent Cree. My mother was 100% Cree. My mother taught him how to live differently when he came out of residential school. I didn't know the horrors that my older sister and brothers did, my siblings. And what they experienced was a horribly rage-filled, angered man who didn't know how to relate to other human beings in a good way, a kind way, who was very controlling, very abusive, very, very violent. And I didn't witness that act. When I came along, he'd already settled down and taken care and changed his ways. And I'm so grateful for that. I only saw my dad take a drink once. I only saw my mother take a drink once. And I personally do not touch alcohol, haven't for over 20 years now, 22 years. I said my grandchildren will never, ever see me lift alcohol to my lips. Ever. And I intend to fulfill that promise that I made when my first grandson was born 22 years ago. And they haven't. They haven't seen me drunk, and they haven't seen me walking down the streets, or they haven't seen me sitting somewhere out of control. But they have seen me angry. My children have seen me angry and couldn't understand what the rage was about. And when I became a social worker some time ago and took that training, that's when I started to understand what residential school did to my family. And I started to piece the pieces together and understanding how cycles happen and how cycles can be broken. And I became committed to helping our people in every which way I can, because only we have the knowledge to help our own people. Recently, studies were showing that through Truth and Reconciliation, that psychologists do not help our people. That is not what helps our people. What helps our people is the elders, the ceremonies, and the traditional ways of life. Identity, that belonging. We belong here. This is our land. And the reality is they keep trying to teach us they're doing us a big favor. They're not. And I keep telling them everywhere I go, to all the professionals, because I'm a professional, and they'll listen to me, because I got the paperwork to back me up. I said, stay out of our business. Mind your own business. I recently told a psychologist in Value Village, you didn't believe my husband, and you fired him because he told you the paperwork didn't come in place. You fired him. I said, that man was in foster care, I said, for 15 years of his life. They never believed him. I says, and he walked around wondering when he was going to be believed. I said, he got a job with you as a counselor. He went through all the training. You didn't believe him. And that goes on all the time. They don't believe the stories. Well, the stories are real. You know, and I use my little ancestor to travel with me to teach about the stories. We need visual aids. We need songs. We need to connect back to who we are as a people. We need to connect back to our ancestral bloodline, which belongs and connects to this land, the spirit of this land. And we cannot stop. We can't give up. I don't give up. I have gone through all kinds of tragedies. I've gone through all kinds of abuses. I've been sexually assaulted. I've been raped. I've been beaten. I've been told, you know, at a point of a gun, what a gun will do to my head or my chest if he shoots it. I've been threatened in all kinds of ways. I've had different people, even our own people, saying, shut the hell up. No, we need to talk about this. We need to heal. We need to understand. More than anything, we need to understand with each other, because that's how we're going to reclaim our own self, our identity, and reclaim our land and take care of it for those next generations. I look at my grandchildren and I think I am responsible for them in all kinds of ways. My children are half Dutch. I married a Dutchman. I'm probably the last Aboriginal woman in this country that was married to. My mother chose to marry me off when I was 15 because the man she thought came from a good family, had a lot of money, and I would be well taken care of. Instead, I suffered an awful lot of abuse in that relationship, and my children paid the price of that as well. So that historical trauma continues because I didn't realize how much violence was pervasive in our communities and how unacceptable. And I learned to adapt to violence and become normal with it, as if it was a norm. It's not a norm. To be kind to each other is normal. So I had to reclaim that, and I had to relearn that again. And it's really gut-wrenching, because to do the work I've done, I've had to examine myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, historically, and presently. So that when I'm working with the people, the triggers that happen for me, and there are many, I'm very well aware of which are mine and which are the other person or the other community members. And we all do that. We don't even realize sometimes when we're looking at somebody, all of a sudden we don't like that person and we think it's because of the way they look. Well, in some ways it is. Because they might remind us of someone, or they might remind us of a situation, or they might remind us of a bad experience. And we all have to learn what that is so we don't react to that in the present day. It is so important. And if we don't keep our cultural ways alive, if we don't keep our spiritual ways alive, nobody else will. Because they don't care. They don't care. Stephen Harper is making that very clear at this time. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if the native people are gone. We're still a problem to him. We're still the ones stopping him from doing things. They don't understand. We think in 7 generations traditionally. That's what the people in residential school would have been brought up with. That's what my dad would have been brought up with had he been at home. My mom was brought up with that, so she passed that down to me. You know, when you think about your ancestors, and you think about your grandparents, your mushrooms, your kukums, think about them as human beings. What did they go through? Ask yourself that question. Because really, my generation, my age, I have yet to meet a woman my age, Cree, Nihil, who's not been raped. There is something seriously wrong with that. Something seriously wrong with that. And when my children were taken from me, it was the first time in my life that I started smoking pot and I got drunk. I did that for a month till my sister said, pull up your socks, you're not going to get your kids back that way. And I'm grateful that she took the time to sit with me and ream me out, basically. What are you doing? That's not how you're going to get them back. And I stopped. I stopped the pot, I stopped the alcohol, and I got my children back not too long after that. But you need to know what your rights are. You need to know what legislation is. You need to be aware of all these things so that you can access all that. You need to be on top of your game. You can't be on top of your game if you're wandering around stoned or drunk. You can't. It's impossible. You must be alert. Your mind must be clear. You must pay attention to what is going on. There's a lot of illusions being created right now as if nothing is going on. There are serious attempts to eradicate our treaties. Very serious attempts to destroy the water on this earth, on our land. Very serious attempts to still assimilate us into a different culture. Well, they have no business doing that. They have no business doing that. And we, as a people, have every business to stand up and say, no more. Absolutely no more. You're not doing that. We know what documents are writing up. We know how to read those things. We understand them. We understand legislation. We understand policy. And we understand now how to argue it back. I'm not saying go out and be violent, but do get involved in some capacity. You're taking care of not only yourself, but you're taking care of your family, you're taking care of your community, you're taking care of our culture. Our culture. Our culture. You know, they'll cry about ducks getting covered up in oil. A bunch of ducks dying because of oil. But it's okay for the Indian to be in downtown Edmonton here, to be dying on the street. And nobody says boo except to kick that native person aside and say you're worthless. I will never, ever treat anybody, any human being, like they're worthless. That's one of the worst things we can do. My auntie, who was in residential school, was savagely murdered here in Edmonton. And at 11 years old, I watched my mother's reaction to that. I watched what she went through when she had to go identify a body that had been chopped up in the downtown hotel here by 3 white men. I watched all that as a child. I took it in and I learned about compassion. I learned about truth. That man got 7 years for the death of for murdering my auntie. And then I watched how her children fell apart. And traditionally my mother became their mother. That auntie had spent time in residential school. She came out of that place like she felt like she was nothing. And she had no idea how to parent. She had no idea how to take care of herself. She had no idea how to love herself. She had no idea how to look at violence as being unacceptable. She had no idea. And we really have to stop and think about these things. I am really a product of all that still. The generational trauma, and I teach about that. And I support people in getting well from it. I help people break cycles. I got out of the judicial system, the correctional system, institutional systems, because I said, I'm sick and tired of putting out fires for the systems. I was trained to help my people. That's what I'm doing. I won't go back into jails. They're destroying us. It's another residential school. And we must work together to keep each other out of those places, because when you go into those places, you will not come back out the same. They are very abusive. I see it firsthand. I saw it firsthand, and I wouldn't participate in it. And we need to be kind to each other. There's enough people crapping on us. Let us be kind and gentle to each other. Hi, hi.
Thank you, hi, for your good words, Elder Taz Boucher. You're listening to Resonating Reconciliation, the Red Jam Slam here in Edmonton, Alberta. I want to thank the TRC, the Red Jam Slam Society, National Campus and Community Radio for their sponsorship. Intergenerational impacts of Indian residential schools, not easy to talk about. If you're listening at home and you need help, call for help. 780-758-2582 is a line available made here, as well as there's elders to help you here if there's any triggers. The Indian residential schools were federally run under the Department of Indian Affairs in partnership with churches, Anglican, United, and Catholic. Attendance was mandatory. Federal agents were employed by the government to ensure that all Indian children attended. Our second panelist, Rose Mary Jane Sylvester Riley, Anishinaabe and Potawatomi Kwe, is from the Great Lakes area. Rose is a great-grandmother, a grandmother, a sister of 9, a mother of 4, a wife, and a daughter. She was registered with the Bozale Band at birth and given away to Children's Aid. That by her father and her mother, they had no choice and no voice. She was adopted and then taken to Holland by a Dutch family and people who became her legal parents. She then married to an Irish family, and she was 27 years old before she was rematriated with her family. I'd like to welcome Rose Riley.
Thank you, everyone. And
Pull it closer, Rose.
I've always been taught that that the Creator comes first, so please bear with me. And if you know the song, sing it with me if you'd like to.
Okay. You're going to turn it on now.
There we go. Is that better?
Try it again.
Oh, I just switched them.
Hi there, everyone. I'm going to sing a song. If you know it, please join with me. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Hi-oh, hi-ye. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Wakan Tonka, Ushimaye. Hi-oh, hi-ye.
Getting a little feedback here.
What that song means is, Creator, we need your help here. And
She has to pull the mic closer.
Oh.
Hold the mic.
okay, what that song means is, Creator, we need your help here. And so I sing it from my heart because we always need Creator's help. One thing that was missing from my bio, and I just want to correct one other thing, I was given away by my dad, and my mother had no choice, and she had no voice. So I'm here today to honor my mom, who just passed away a few months ago. The other thing is that the people who allowed me to attend their ceremonies were the Lakota. And so my name and many of my teachings come from the Lakota and Dakota people, but also from all of the elders and people in the Edmonton community and Edmonton area who have graciously given of their hearts and their stories and their time as well. My husband, who is here today, has never seen me be as quiet as I was after going to ceremony, because ceremony gave me a peace that I had never experienced before. So that silence of knowing the Creator and having that peace inside was just totally foreign to me. And he used to ask me all the time, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Like, you're not saying anything. I am so okay that you're not even going to believe how okay I am. I couldn't put it into words. So I really credit ceremony with saving my life. Because between 27, when I started looking for my biological family, it took me a couple of years. And as a person who was part of that larger mainstream community, I went the parent finders route. And so I knew nothing about our own communities and how easy it might have been to just go to the Friendship Center and ask somebody there. Had I done that, I would have run into my brother, who just lived down the street from my mother. So I followed that linear pathway that Parent Finders has. And, like Travis was saying earlier, he was very deeply impacted by the drums. At the very first Dream Speakers Festival here in Edmonton, there were drums playing, and I happened to be on a break from being at a booth. And the tears just came. I didn't understand why they came, but the tears just came, and I was just so affected. And from that day forward, my whole life has changed, because I was no longer sitting in Edmonton. I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess, an elder had said, "Oh, you had a vision." And so there was no tall buildings anymore. What there was a gathering of nations and people from all over who were interacting with each other, experiencing joy, trading, eating, singing, and there was just love everywhere. And it was something to behold, and I couldn't put it into words for a really, really long time. Neither one of my parents went to residential school, but when we talk about intergenerational trauma, there's the effect on the extended communities. My reserve is a little island in the Great Lakes, and so as such, there was 2 or 3 churches on this little tiny island, and there was no need to take the children away because they were isolated. Just don't let them get on the boat to get to the mainland. And there was enough priests there to take care of business, so to speak, of Christianizing. For me, having been raised away from the community and the culture, of course, I was raised within the Roman Catholic faith and experienced all of their rituals that also occur at different ages, the same way ours occur at different ages. I missed out on my Girl Becomes a Woman ceremony at the age of 12. But fortunately, I was lucky to have that experience when I was 30. So if I'm wearing my horsehair earrings, then you can be assured it's because I've earned the right to wear them, because I've had my Girl Becomes a Woman ceremony. They're not just earrings of a unique design. The sorrow and pain and anger that people have within them has affected our family greatly because we've been hurt. We've been hurt by people who've lashed out at us because I look too white, I just don't look right. Because of the drums, because of being Anishinaabe, and the Anishinaabe people have the role of taking care of the drums. That is what we brought to this community. And we were kind of abused at the community level. So a lot of what I would like to address today is what has happened to us. Where is the love? When we say our prayers and they end with, all my relations, or we are all related, it doesn't mean, oh, except you and except you and except you. We are all related means just that. And movies because I taught at Norquest College, an Aboriginal community support worker program, I had access to films from a long, long time ago. And the elders, even back then, these films were made late 60s, early 70s, in courtrooms. They were saying then, we need to stop being angry. We need to forgive. And so as hard as it is, I really believe that we need to forgive. I also think that a lot of us, I couldn't have at the beginning of my journey. A lot of us have to go through quite a bit of healing before we can even entertain the thought of forgiving what has occurred. And the only person that's going to be able to carrying that healing forward into their own lives is each person individually. And if you don't know where to start, and if you don't know what to do, you take a piece of tobacco and you bury it in the earth. And you ask the Creator to show you where to go and to show you what to do. And then be on the watch. It may happen quickly, it may not happen for a long, long time, and for me that used to mean maybe a year. But really, it could mean a decade or 2. So time is not the same in that mainstream world as it is for us. But make your tobacco offering to the mother of all, our earth, and let her, through Creator, help you find where you need to go. And enjoy your life in the meantime. Find your peace. Find whatever it is that gives you peace. Be part of things you can be part of. Enjoy what you can enjoy. There's lots of reasons to cry, and you will cry. But you need to also experience the joy to balance that pain out. The things that happen now. Where I met Travis was at craft shows, an annual craft show. You know, where I met different people is not at places where you would think you would go and meet other people that are on that road too, but you'll see them, they're out there. So, I don't know, for all of you, our community in Edmonton is strong. It can get stronger as it gets healthier. It can get healthier by getting out there and doing things. And I'm saying to you what I need to remind myself of all the time, to get out there more and do things more. But I'm tired of crying. You know, the elders said that a nation is not ended until the women are picking their hearts up off the ground, and that is what gave me encouragement when I thought I couldn't take any more pain. Defiantly, I would pick up my heart, not with love, but defiantly, because they were not going to keep me down. And even though I may not have known my family, my biological immediate family, it occurred to me one time that the grandmothers and grandfathers have always known me. There's the sun, there's the moon, there's the rock, the water, the air we breathe. There is all the little ants. Everything that exists out there has known me, even though I may not have known them. And so when I was full of sorrow about not having a relationship, there must have been a reason that Creator did that. And I am just really, really blessed that I had enough teachings to recognize that all the grandmothers and grandfathers around me had always known me. So I got to be very grateful for that. I just don't want anybody to think that our journey for change is going to be easy, not within and not outside. We may never change things with the government. Then again, we might. But it's going to take people who've done that work inside to not give up and not go away. And to meet other people who are also willing to stand strong in their identity, in their truth, in their story, and in their dreams. Because everything we do today, we do for the past 7 generations and the next 7 generations. So if I give up today, I'm giving up for all 14 of them. It's not just for me, and it's not even just for my kids and grandkids. It's for 14 generations. So when you look at that, you know, that's also where your support is going to come from. Your ancestors and your family yet to come. So with that, I would just like to say, Panamaye, thank you very much. Timagwech, hi. And I really hope that you continue in your journeys, in your learning, in your teaching, and that if we see each other around, if I don't recognize you, that you come up to me and say hi, and we'll shake hands, and we'll chat for a moment. Okay? Love you all, and see you all.
Hi, Rose, Mary Jane, Sylvester Riley, for your good words. Miigwech. The government now recognizes that the consequences of the Indian residential school policy were profoundly negative and that this policy has had lasting damaging impacts on Aboriginal culture, heritage, and language. While some former students have spoken positively about their experiences at Indian residential school, these stories are far overshadowed by tragic accounts of the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse and neglect of helpless children and their separation from powerless families and communities. To date, there is no acknowledgement of the spiritual abuse that occurred within these Indian residential schools. You are listening to Resonating Reconciliation, the Red Jam Slam. You can join the conversation on Twitter. The handle is #RedJamSlam, #ResonatingReconciliation. Our next speaker, Marilyn, she does speed. She's very quick, is Marilyn Dumont. She is Cree and Métis from the Kikino settlement. She has been writing and publishing since 1985. She has published 3 award-winning collections of poetry, and she has worked on a film crew for the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. She teaches creative writing for Athabasca University since 2007. She also teaches English at the University of Alberta, the Faculty of Native Studies, and the English Department. I'd like to welcome Marilyn Dumont.
Let me just check this mic, if it's working. Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much for inviting me to be on this panel, and I want to acknowledge Gunarji O'Sullivan's hard work and the people that are working with her, and also Donald Moran. You're probably going to have a really good sleep tonight, Donald, after you take down all this equipment. Thank you, Rose, for reminding me what saved my life. I'm the youngest of 9. I grew up in an alcoholic home. My father drank, my mother didn't, and there was always conflict over that. But really what saved my life, and I didn't really know it saved my life until after I wrote the book, was my first book of poetry, which is called A Really Good Brown Girl. And my parents moved off the Kikino settlement not too long after it was established, actually, and moved to southern Alberta. So I grew up in a little redneck town here in Alberta, and it was not a nice memory to grow up with. I guess for myself, the reconciliation, it means reparation. It means that something needs to be repaired in this relationship between the state and Indigenous people. And I guess what I grew up with was a lot of shame. And I didn't know that's what I didn't give it that name. I just knew that it was pretty widespread in my family, and internalized racism where we take it out on ourselves and other Aboriginal people. And we've learned these behaviors from the state, from the government. So in my first book, I really do believe that book saved my life. I was able to express in that book all of the pain and the shame, fear, anger, rage that I felt. One of the things that most affected me was not learning the Cree language. And that has been a great grief to me, but I am slowly starting to learn it. Both my parents spoke Cree and, of course, English, but living in that little redneck town, they wanted us to know English. And as Travis was saying today, they didn't say it in so many words, and they didn't have to, that we had to be different. We had to act differently than, or we had to always be mindful of somebody judging us in that small town and to act accordingly. And that was really hard on me as a kid, and I could never really figure out exactly what was going on until much later in my life when I started to journal and to write about these things. I guess in terms of the reparation of what happened at residential school, both my parents went to day school. My father went to grade 3 and my mother went to grade 6. My mother lived on the Onion Lake Reserve, even though both her parents were Métis, but her father and grandfathers were both interpreters for Indian Affairs there. And I think she internalized a lot of the shame from the day school, and that was definitely passed on to us and to me. I guess when I think about repairing things, I think about Harper's apology, and I think we all know when we do something that is a violation of another person, it is really difficult to go back and to say, I'm sorry. But really, the verbal apology is the easiest thing to do. It's what you do after that verbal apology that makes a real difference. And I think that with Harper, it was easy to say, I'm sorry, and to do this in front of a spectacle style in the legislature. However, I think it really shows the government's attitude towards Indigenous people really shows when we see that things like Idle No More, and just in our own neighborhood here where Aboriginal people were out on the Queenie, and one of the motorists who thought they were being inconvenienced wanted to run over some Aboriginal people. And I just think, you know what, if we had a leader in this country that really was apologetic, they would be modeling behavior that says that's wrong. But none of that happens in this country. The other thing is that the government will keep saying, well, you know, we need to do more studies, or what do we need to do, what do we need to do? And actually, the first time I met Gunarji, we were in training to be on the RCAP film crew, and that was in 1992, 1991. And we shot over 800 hours of film. We went to each one of the communities and basically filmed talking heads of the commissioners, but also of people in those communities, that some people walked there to give their statement. And the government still doesn't know what to do? I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't believe that. And the other thing is that that commission was the most expensive royal commission in this country's history, and this government will not look at that piece of legislation. There are 5 books people can read and find out exactly what the government needs to do, but unfortunately, as I say, an apology is easy, but to actually put it into practice is the other matter. I think that's probably all I want to say, but thank you very much for listening. Oh.
Marilyn? Thank you for your words, Marilyn. I'm wondering if you will read one of your poems to the audience as you dig it out.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
I think for me, one of the most difficult things, this might give you an idea of, I'll read The White Judges. I guess that's, when I thought about this poem, I thought about what is the image, and the image I had in that small redneck town that I grew up in was that there were a group of judges dressed in white, sitting around our house and scrutinizing everything that we did. That as soon as we made a wrong move, you know, we could be called, oh, there's those dirty, lazy, drunken Indians. So this is a poem called The White Judges. We lived in an old schoolhouse, one large room that my father converted into 2 stories with a plank staircase leading to the 2nd floor. A single window on the south wall created a space that was dimly lit, even at midday. All 9 kids and the occasional friend slept upstairs like cadets in rows of shared double beds, ate downstairs in the kitchen near the gas stove, and watched TV near the airtight heater in the adjacent room. Our floors were worn linoleum and scatter rugs, our walls high and bare except for the family photos whose frames were crowded with siblings waiting to come of age, marry, or leave. At supper, 11 of us would stare down a pot of moose stew, bannock, and tea, while outside the white judges sat encircling our house. And they waited to judge, waited till we ate tripe, watched us inhale its wild vapor, sliced and steaming on our plates, watched us welcome it into our being, sink our teeth into its rubbery texture, chew and roll each wet and tentacled piece, swallow its gamey juices, until we had become it, and it had become us. Or waited till the cardboard boxes were anonymously dropped at our door, spilling with clothes, waited till we ran swiftly away from the windows and doors to the farthest room for fear of being seen, and dared one another to open it. No, you open it. No, you. Someone would open it, cautiously pulling out a shirt that would be tried on, then passed around till somebody claimed it by fit. Then 16 or 18 hands would be pulling out skirts, pants, jackets, dresses from a box transformed now into the Sears catalog. Or the white judges would wait till twilight, and my father and older brothers would drag a blood-stained canvas heavy with meat from the truck onto our lawn, and my mother would lift and lay it in place like a dead relative, praying, coaxing, and thanking it. Then she'd cut the thick hair and skin back till it lay in folds beside it like carpet, carving off firm chunks until the marble bone shone out of the red-blue flesh. Long into the truck headlight night she'd carve, talking in Cree to my father and in English to my brothers. Long into the dark, their voices talking us to sleep while our bellies rested in the meat days ahead. Or wait till the guitars came out and the furniture was pushed up against the walls and we'd polish the linoleum with our dancing till our socks had holes. Or wait till a fight broke out and the night would settle in our bones and we'd ache with shame for having heard or spoken that which sits at the edge of our light side, that which comes but we wished it hadn't, like relatives who would arrive at Christmas and leave at Easter.
That was a reading from A Really Good Brown Girl, Marilyn Dumont. It's published by Brick Books. Thank you, Marilyn, for your words. You're listening to Red Jam Slam live in Edmonton. This is Resonating Reconciliation. Join the conversation on Twitter, hashtag Resonating Reconciliation and hashtag Red Jam Slam. Talking about the intergenerational impacts of Indian residential schools is not easy. There's triggers for us, and there's help. We can talk to each other, we can talk to Creator, we can talk with our elders, and we can talk with counselors. There are lines, and I was given this one. Can I give this one? You can call for help. 780-530-5672 is one of those available numbers. The legacy of the Indian residential schools has contributed to social problems that continue to exist in many of our communities today. That was a quotation from Harper when he gave the official apology. Our next speaker, Ganarji O'Sullivan, has done a tremendous amount of work to put this on together. I want to thank you for all your efforts in making this happen, all the work that you do with National Campus Community Radio Association, your tireless dedication and commitment to our people. You are working on 40 documentations about Indian residential school experiences, which I imagine is a long adventure. So thank you for taking that on. She is currently the outreach coordinator for Resonating Reconciliation. I'd like to welcome Ganarji O'Sullivan to the panel.
Right on. Thank you. Testing, 1, 2. Hey, I have this really crazy urge to try and be funny, but I'm not, so I'm just going to leave that to Travis Dugaz. Leave it to the pros. But I was thinking a little bit about everything that everybody said today. And what our friend here, Jody, talked about is getting over the anger and reaching the point of forgiveness. When I first started this video that Donald was showing you earlier, it was called Unsettling. And I named it Unsettling because I read that residential school agreement. It was 500 pages long, and it was so confusing, and it felt like the government had us over a barrel with a gun to our head and giving us a short period of time to decide whether we want to agree with this residential school agreement or opt out of it. So I chose to opt out of it. And at that time, I was really super angry. I didn't trust the government one bit. I started feeling the impact of the residential school upon myself and upon my mother, who also went to residential school, and all of my aunties and uncles who are no longer with us here today. And I had this opportunity to go to Gulf Island Film School, which is in Vancouver Island. And while I was there, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to address this residential school agreement. And I was going to try and get the word out that maybe this agreement wasn't the best agreement that we could have had for ourselves. Just considering it didn't include our mothers and our fathers in that agreement, it didn't include the day school, it didn't include the Métis people. Was this really a just agreement? So I went to Gulf Island Film School and I did unsettling, meaning that I'm unsettled by the residential school agreement and I also am unsettling. I do not agree with it. I opted out. And then we made 5 other PSAs, right? Like what, one was Concerned Canadians, another one was A Fork in the Road. And we did this in a matter of 1 week, which is a really great accomplishment. But if you saw my video, Unsettling, at the end, I'm giving the finger to the apology. I'm giving the finger to forgiveness at that point, because that's how I felt. I thought, you all, right? How dare you put our people through this process? And the thing that mostly offended me about the residential school agreement was the independent assessment process. That is disgusting. How dare they put our elders through such an unjust process where they have to describe how many times they got it here, there, and everywhere, and if they got it in one place, they're going to get $3,000, and if they got it put somewhere else with a foreign object, then they would get an additional $10,000. Who does that to their elders but the government? Who does that to children but the government? And that's where I was, at, and in some ways am still uptight when it comes to these processes that we continue to get put through. Why should there be a time limit to charge somebody for sexual abuse when there is no time limit for statutory rape? I mean, it's unlimitless. You shouldn't have to decide in a month or 2 or a year whether you're going to charge that priest for doing what he did to you or to your children or to your mother and your father. You know, and to have that legacy handed down, it's ridiculous. So then I did that. And then I heard the apology. And I heard that apology when I was at the National Community Radio Association. It was one of the first times I had been invited to this National Community Radio Association. There were like 50 to 120 other radio stations across Canada there. And they were releasing the apology on June the 11th. And CBC found out that there was a Native caucus there, and they invited our Native caucus to watch the apology in a room where they would film our reaction to the apology and then later ask us questions on how we felt about it. Well, when this was happening, I decided to go from workshop to workshop. And I started knocking on people's door and disrupting the workshops that we were at. Some of them were learning how to edit on Audacity. Some of them were learning how to do interviews. I'm like, you got to come watch the apology with us. You know, CBC is filming it. They want our reaction. And they're like, the what? And I go, Stephen Harper's apology. Come on, come on. And I just gathered everybody up. We went into this room. We watched this apology together. And when it was over, I was bombarded by broadcasters from all across Canada asking me, Ganarji, why don't we know anything about this? How come? How come? This is the first time I've ever heard about it. It's an atrocity. It's terrible. It's this and it's that. And I said, well, because that's what mainstream media does. It buries it. It buries anything that is significant to our people so that we cannot have like a mind of our own, and so that people can't see us in the light that we want to be seen in, which is as artists, literary artists, singers and dancers like Dallas Arcand, and broadcasters. So when I was done listening to the people tell me why didn't we know about it, I interviewed them all, and then we posted an interview on 12 broadcasters responding to the Stephen Harper apology. And then I went home and I made up this song called I Don't Need No Apology. It goes like this. The other day, yeah, I sat and I saw you as you said, you're sorry. you're sorry. But I don't need no apology. No. I don't need no apology. No apology from you. The only thing I was missing was the middle finger that time. And then I wrote another poem, and it was about the apology. And I was saying stuff like, in this poem, your apology is not. I said, your apology reminds me of a Marianne Faithfull love song. Why'd you do what you did? Why'd you do what you did? And that's how angry I was, right? And now I find myself doing this work with Truth and Reconciliation. I've gone from being this very angry person who can't stand the government, can't trust them, hated the apology, I hated the residential school agreement, and I hate the independent assessment process. But I still find it in my heart to rise above this, because I know that that residential school agreement opened a can of worms for our people. And now we are left to deal with it. We have to deal with this in a meaningful way. We have to deal with this and make a difference in our lives and the lives of our children, and even the lives of our grandparents. Creating this understanding, finding out what your grandparents went through, what your mothers went through, is really crucial to your well-being as an intergenerational survivor. My mother went to residential school. She went there for like 7 years, and she was a bully, and she beat up everybody in the residential school. And she had a gang, and she was the leader of this gang. And she used to beat this lady up because they both liked the same guy, right? And so I went for years because I was adopted, and I went to foster care. I even went to residential school. I never knew my mother. I didn't know a thing about her, except that I looked like her, and I look a lot like her. I met my brother when I was 23 years old. He lived 65 miles down the road from me, and he introduced me to radio. He said, you'd be good at it. You'd be good at it, sis. Come do it. Come do it. Finally, I did it, and I kept at it. For 20 years, I've been sticking at community and campus radio. I give my heart and my soul to it. I used to hitchhike 65 miles just to do a radio show for free, just so I could play some CDs that were by Native people, so I could talk to other Native literary artists and producers. And I never got paid for a thing for years and years. And that's just how I swing. I don't mind doing things for free. It's who I am, it's what I do, and it's what I do well. And sometimes when money is attached, it gets a little bit complicated. So money isn't important. What is important is that you put your heart and soul into everything, and that you never give up. And you work through your problems. You work through your problems with poetry, by drawing a picture, by sharing your stories with other people, by singing songs. Singing a song will get you through hell or high water. I swear to God, it's gotten me through a lot. And now I've given that gift to my daughter, Aisha. So I'm just going to lead up to what I'm doing right now, because it is exciting. And it is what can happen if you can kind of get over yourself and your own anger issues. And what I started doing was I started getting involved with the National Community Radio Association. Again, I volunteered more time. I got on their board. And we recognized that there was a lack of representation at a national level, that there were very few First Nations people that were coming to these conferences or that even had radio shows at community and campus level. So then I got on the board, and I said, well, what I think would be great is if we could tap into this Truth and Reconciliation Commission and start allocating the funds that they give us to various radio stations across Canada and asking them to recruit First Nations people to come into their station, give them some training with some skills and abilities, and have them go out into their own communities from the regions in which you broadcast in, and ask those young people to go and collect interviews from people within their own territory about residential schools. And by doing this, what we'll be doing is closing the gap of awareness between the generations. The young people can talk to their elders and interview them, take it back to their station. By doing that, they're building this relationship with a radio station that has a bunch of different people there. like our station, we have black people there, we have East Indians, we have Chinese people, we have all kinds of denominations. So when your youth or people from your community bring that story back to the station, the editor gets to find out what residential schools did to our people. And then the programmer gets to learn once they air it. And then all of these listeners start to learn. So this is the gift that you can get when you have an open mind and when you stay on it and never give up. You just have to stay on it. Whatever it is that you do for nothing is your passion. That's when you know what your passion is. If you can hitchhike up and down the road just so you can do a radio show and that you can do it for 20 years for free, there's your answer. That's what you've got to do, and you have to stick to it. So thank you for coming here and celebrating Mother's Day and resonating reconciliation.
We're doing a film right now. Are we doing a film?
Keep talking. Oh, yeah. If Donald, did you guys want to watch my film Unsettling? Want to see how angry I can get?
Prior to,
it's kind of interesting because what I did here is I was able to get my own mother to apologize to me within the film. Go ahead. Okay, sure.
we're going to have Elder Taz Boucher do a healing song, and then we'll move into the film.
Part of my role as elder, I still haven't figured out what really that means, but the community identifies an elder. It's not up to someone to walk up to the world and say, aha, here I am, your elder. And eldership is not owning. I hear people saying, this is my elder. I don't ever recall being taught that when I was young. I just say that is the elder. And when I was growing up, elder meant someone older than me quite often. But lately it's been people who are gifted in a knowledge of being able to help people through the trauma, through the historical trauma. One of the songs that was given to me in Sundance and Sweat Lodge is a sacred song, but I do have permission for it to be videotaped, for it to be recorded, because we're realizing not enough young people are taking up our old ways, and those of us who have the knowledge are starting to drop like flies. In other words, what I'm saying is that we are going home to the other side. We're dying with our knowledge, and we're taking it with us. So those of you who are interested, please do take the time when any time there's somebody, an elder who has knowledge, says, I'm offering teachings, go get the teachings. Take tobacco with you and give the teachings, because there just isn't enough people. So what I've been doing is allowing and giving permission for all these things to be videotaped, because I really don't want to be used to be. You know, the words used to be. They used to do this. They used to do that. I don't want that to happen. I want people to be able to say, this is what we do. And I think that's really important. I'm brown. I can't get around that. No matter what I do, I can't pretend to be anything other than who I am. And I was not taught to be ashamed of being nihio. I was taught to be proud. And then when my son was born, he was lifted to the four directions. He was offered to the spirits in a sacred ceremony. And he was given the name Nihio. And my mother's tears that rolled down her face when she named my son and gave him that Indian name. I remember looking at her and thinking how hard her life was, because she couldn't speak English. She couldn't read or write. She didn't go to an education. And at times she felt stupid, but she wasn't. She was very wise. And she was one of those that was hidden in a bush. 1951, that law was changed for us to practice our spiritual practices. God bless them for letting us do that. And that's a sarcastic word I'm using there. Right? The reality is, it's our way. And it has helped many, many, many people get past the anger, get past the rage. That is all part of the process. When you're feeling angry, we teach in ceremony all kinds of different things to help you take care of yourself, so you're not passing on the hurt. Hurt people hurt. We know that. We love you better. We love you well. That's what we do in ceremony. So the song that I'm going to sing is a Spotted Eagle song. It is in the Sioux language, now to honor my ancestral bloodline from that direction, and to to help you if it brings memories, because it might not be triggered now. A trigger is like something that just gets to you. It's like a gun has been shot at you, you're hit somewhere, and the wound might not show itself immediately. It might show up a little bit later, and you're going to wonder, why do I feel angry all of a sudden? You might be having a trigger experience. Please do take the time to phone one of the numbers that you were given, or to go online, or to even access a support line of some sort, or phone a family member or somebody in your household. Sit down, talk, smudge if you do smudge, sing, write, but do something to take care of yourself, because really, rage kills. And it really does. I've seen the institutions filled with rage, and they continue to kill each other, which is really unfortunate. So, close your eyes. Let me take care of you for a second, for a couple of minutes. Take a deep breath. A really deep breath. Understand, Creator has given you air free of charge. There's no bill waiting for you that you have to pay up in debt for the air that you breathe. Understand, water was given to us free of charge, and all we have to do is make sure we take care of it. Mother Earth gives to us free of charge, but she does get a little unsettled if we take too much. And then when you think of Grandfather Sun up there, the great fire that lights our world and provides heat, we must be grateful. Otherwise we would freeze instantly if we didn't have Grandfather Sun. And it's okay. You're okay. We are loved. We are loved. I am loved. You have to walk around thinking that. I am loved. Creator loves me the way I am. And nobody should take that away from us. Tikashila Tekashela Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Yahweh Wambodi Gleshka Ayate Tekaya Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Yahweh Tekashela Yahweh Tekashela Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Yahweh Wambodi Gleshka Hayate Tekaya Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Yahweh Tekashela Yahweh Tekashela Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Yahweh Wambodi Gleshka Hayate Tekaya Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Yahweh Tekashela Yahweh Tekashela Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Yahweh Wambodi Gleshka Ayate Tekaya Yahweh Hombondi Upshina Wahweh Please understand, your ancestors, your bloodline before you was taught to hate and to hurt. Understand, had they been taught differently, it wouldn't have been that way. Understand, through no decision of their own, did they give up you as a child if you were taken away. That judicial system that started with the Indian Act has devastated our people in all kinds of ways. Let us love each other well. Let us love each other well. Hi, hi.